John Didi, professor of political science at the community colleges of Baltimore County and local media political analyst. Welcome to the Maryland State Politics and Government podcast on Substack. Today, I am talking with Crystal Cody, a candidate for the 8th District Baltimore County race. Welcome aboard.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. My first question today is, why are you running? And for some of my listeners who may not be 24/7 into politics, 30-second or a 2-minute or even longer little biography of who is Crystal Cody.
Yes, well, first and foremost, I want to thank all the viewers for listening and watching. Thank you for having me on this show. I appreciate everything that you're doing to ensure that voters are educated and can get to know the candidates in the race. Again, my name is Crystal Cody, and I am running for Baltimore County Council in District 8, which covers Chase, Essex, Middle River, and parts of White Marsh. And I am running for a couple of different reasons. Number one, I'm running because I believe that our area deserves a champion who really understands how government works, who knows how to work, not only for the people, but how to build coalitions and partnerships. I have spent my entire career helping to support in the background, modernizing government systems, helping to support policy and legislation, managing budgets, and using data to solve problems. So I want to bring that experience back home to District 8. I believe that the greatest need in District 8 is, stability, healthy communities, affordable housing, and the career trajectory that I have been on for the past 20 years. I have the experience. I wouldn't need to get training. I'd be able to go in on day one to do the work. A little bit about me. I am a mom. I am a wife of a veteran. I am a daughter of two Army veterans. And I have grown up and lived and have been shaped by the communities in District 8. I'm a product of Baltimore County public school system. And I really understand what our neighbors need. I understand the challenges and realities that we are facing, not because I have researched them, but because I've lived them right here in this community. In terms of my career, I have spent 20 years working for the government. I've supported both federal, state, and local government. And so I know how government works. I know how complex and challenging systems are, and I know how to leverage public policy to fix it. So that is why I'm running.
Date is a brand new district. And based on how this has been carved out, what do you think is the number one issue for the district and for you that you really wanted to enunciate the voters?
Yeah, for those who've had the opportunity to pay attention to what's going on, and maybe didn't, I think we've heard from our current elected officials that Baltimore County's budget is, and the challenges we're facing, not only from the state level, but the cuts that we're experiencing from the federal level is going to put the county in a challenging position um, within the coming fiscal years. And so, from a legislative standpoint, I think there is a need for a leader that can come in to use data to support strategizing and supporting all of the capital projects and things that were earmarked to be funded, to make sure that those things get across the threshold this year with the budget crisis looming, and to make sure that there is room to support all the other things that neighbors and constituents want. And so, some of the things that I'm hearing, not only from our, voters within District 8, is the need for, supporting the overcrowding of schools. So we have, school infrastructure that needs major improvement. There are our volunteer fire departments. They need more funding, and they're asking for more funding from the county to sustain their budget so that they can maintain 50% staffing and operation during the daytime hours. There is a need for, areas that don't have parks. Greenlee wants a new library. So there are a lot of different things that are happening But there are also things that we aren't hearing, people talk about, like the stormwater crisis, the sewage maintenance issue happening in Chase, where the community is going to be held responsible to maintain maintenance and the functioning of the sewage uh, pumps that they have there in Chase. There's also a need for, if you look at, you just drive down, the Essex business corridor, the Country Ridge Shopping Center. There are many communities that can't even walk to a grocery store. Um, if you look here off of Route 40 in some of our rural community areas, there aren't sidewalks. Citizens have been asking the county to help put more sidewalks so people can walk and bike safely. So I think we have a lot of different needs. Affordable housing has been talked about, continuing to fund the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, providing support for, the pensions and everything that the county has to sustain. But there's critical financial pressure. So we need somebody that's going to come into the seat that understands how government works, that understands how to get funding across the table, and to work in partnership with whoever the new county executive is going to be, to create a strategy and plan to bring in more investment in dollars so that the county can afford to pay for everything that we need.
You touched on community before, and community is very important in general. You also talked about housing. How can we get to a point of creating more housing in a variety of different communities? Because the number one thing that holds people back sometimes to move to a place or decide, well, this is where I'll settle, is the housing situation. What would you propose and do to help deal with that problem in District 8?
Yeah, there's a couple of different things. I mean, we have to look at the root cause of why the cost of housing is so high. If you look at it from from the standpoint of the developers who are building houses, they'll tell you the cost to build has gone up, and they're not lying. Um, we have to look at the types of houses that we're building, the kind of um, methodology that's used to build houses. Like there's a certain thing called off-site construction, which is supposed to reduce the cost of labor by 40%. But there's also, in Essex and in Middle River, largely the District 8 is inside of the urban rural demarcation line. Community members are concerned about the oversaturation of new construction, which is, is important to understand. I don't think we're doing enough to leverage our current existing aging housing stock. We have, if you look in off of Back River Neck Road and Eastern Boulevard, there are business corridors that are practically vacant that could be used to put in housing. I don't think we've leveraged enough of the tiny home community model. Um, we have to make sure that we're providing affordability not just for apartment buildings, but also for homeowners as well. So I think leveraging and finding ways to improve the existing and aging housing stock is important. Figuring out ways for individuals that do own homes, especially young folks who maybe, have inherited a home and they can't afford repair, even for our senior citizens who, they have lived in their homes for 20, 30 years and are looking maybe to downsize. We need to make sure that we're providing necessary resources and supports for new homeowners, but also making sure that we are working in partnership with developers not to allow them to just come in to do whatever they want, but make sure they're paying their fair share. And that is a way that the county can collect more revenue, for example, the impact fee assessment. So it's important to make sure that we're leveraging all kinds of housing and making sure that there's not an oversaturation in areas. Like, people live in Baltimore County for a couple of different reasons. Baltimore County is often more affordable than living downtown. But also, people come to the county because they do want that open space. They do want to have, a backyard. And so we have to make sure that we're not overdeveloping. A lot of community members, if you hear, constituents in Towson saying, wow, it looks like New York here because of all the buildings and hotels and things that have been erected. So we have to make sure there's a good balance and make sure that we have a plan to ensure that we're not putting all affordable housing in one concentrated area, that it's spread out without, you know, make without um, taking up all of our green space.
Touched on this a little bit before with some of the stuff about housing and business in general. The
Mhm.
county has lost population. It's also lost some businesses coming in.
Oh.
If you were elected the county council, what would you do that what you could do in many ways is to kind of have policies to bring some population and bring some businesses back into the county?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I also think that we need to provide more support for our staple businesses that have been here for decades, um, that, are on the brink of closing their doors. That's also an issue. Over here in our district, I don't know if you've ever been to Sunset Cove or Benji's Drive-Through. There are a lot of businesses that have been here for decades that, Sunset Cove is doesn't have its doors open anymore. And so, you know, in order to bring in new business, we have to make sure, number one, um, for example, grocery stores are a great way to bring in new business, local to the community. But a lot of grocery stores are not going to move into a certain area if it doesn't have a certain income level. For example, a lot of people say, "Oh, we want Wegmans, or we want Harris Teeter, or we want whatever," but we all the grocery stores we're getting are called, Aldi or food outlet, and residents want more high end, if you will, brands coming in. We have to make sure that we're doing what we need to do to, beautify our current business corridors. We have to make sure that we are beautifying our neighborhoods, making sure that we're cleaning up, making sure all of the community is a place where somebody would call safe, to live. And we have to have a plan in place to make sure that people can, again, afford to live here. I think the affordability piece is what's driving people out. They're leaving Baltimore County and going to Harford County and Anne Arundel County because they can find, um, cheaper rent, cheaper housing. So it's all tied together. And I think once we get a handle on, um, you know, affordability, that will bring in the population, which will then in turn bring in the businesses that want to, um, house themselves here. So in order to do that, we have to make sure that our county is welcoming of new businesses. But I also think that there needs to be more to encourage entrepreneurship right here in District 8. I don't think we have enough resources available for people that may have an idea and want to start a business here in the county, and they're from this county and they live in the district, but they don't know how to get started. So that is something that I would make sure we have more funding to have homegrown businesses right out of the county, supporting District 8 members.
From Eastern Avenue, from basically the mall to by the docks to get crab cakes. Yes, you could use a Wegmans. It would be a
Yes,
very big help to have those type of places because Wegmans has marketed itself as an affluent place to go. And the
that's right.
more, and ironically, in many ways, when you have something like that coming in, it's like a steroid effect for the community. Hey, look, we got this. We got a Wegmans. This poor broke community doesn't have one. We're affluent.
That's right. And if you look at, even if and that's one of the reasons why I'm running, is because I feel like the southeast side of Baltimore County, many members say that we have been forgotten. If you look at all of the money that has been put into Foundry Row over on in Owens Mills, and I think this side, especially in Essex, there's so much rich history. And in Essex, in Chase, we have the waterfront. We need to do more to ensure that we are bringing the character out of those neighborhoods and marketing. to bring people. People don't even know that there's a lot of waterfront down here on this side of town if they're not from here. Same thing, Rocky Point, if you go further down into Essex. So these are things that I want to make sure we do. And it's also going to require a really good leadership from whoever is going to be the next county executive as well to partner to make sure that District 8 is getting access to the fair share of the budget and resources.
Talked about the budget before, and one of the things I've talked with a lot of people running in Baltimore County for a variety of different offices, there's the one thing that terrifies them regarding to the future budget, the
Mhm.
blueprint, financing that. What are your thoughts regarding the blueprint? Do you think there should be a pause? As a county council member, if elected, how would you deal with that situation that's going to come up? It's not going to go away.
Yeah. So the blueprint for Maryland's future was created to provide kind of like a North Star for how we should be, you know, funding and investing in our schools. Um, Again, there are a lot of things that the blueprint calls for that the county currently it would not be able to equitably distribute across every single district. And so there needs to be a plan in place for, like example, there were a couple of new schools that were built. There's funding available for renovations. But then you also have teachers who, they want to be paid more. There's a need for wraparound support services. In District 8, there are a lot of schools that are zoned and students that are living under the poverty level, where investments need to be made not only in the classroom, but the wraparound support that's necessary. So I think that there needs to be a benchmark created to fund things from what's considered the highest priority and what has to happen versus what can wait for later while we're working on a strategy to bring more investment dollars back into Baltimore County without raising taxes because our residents are stretched thin. A lot of people who, served in the federal government lost their jobs and are still looking for work. And so we have to make sure that we are putting those critical fundings. I believe if a school is crumbling or there's no HVAC, those are things that are considered emergencies that need to be funded, within the current year. Um, you know, for those we do need to address the school overcrowding in certain areas, especially in this area where I am in, because there are a lot of developments actively going on. There's an apartment building that's being created right in the Greenlee area where I am in addition to about 4 or 5 different new developments. So that's gonna bring in more population, bring in more children. And so we have to make sure that our school infrastructure, especially aging infrastructure, is repaired. Um, and then working our way backwards from there. Um, if we don't pay teachers their fair share, if we can't make sure that when people retire that they have access to health care, um, you know, or COLA increases so that they can keep up with the cost of living, they're going to move. And we need to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to maintain our current population, but attract people. And it starts by making sure that we have a really good program that pays teachers their fair share to invite them to work for Baltimore County and not just work here, but also live here. Same thing for our EMS and fire department. Same thing for our police officers. There's a strategy that needs to be put in place, long term, so that we're not always catching up. That there's a formula that could be applied for how the county grows. That funding dollars are automatically allocated based on the growth. So that's something that I would love to help work with the current council on developing such a formula to propose to the new county executive for how we can make sure we're not playing catch up, but we're proactive.
One of the big economic engines in that area of the county is CCBC. Where do you, and there's a lot of people, it's their last choice as far as trying to get into a college because they didn't have very good grades. They hope to get to Towson someday or UMBC. Also,
Yes.
they do a lot of career training things.
Mhm.
What is your views as far as how CCBC can play a role in the community? What would you do to increase funding, et cetera? What do you think that can be done?
Yes, I think CCBC is doing an amazing job with workforce development. A lot of people still to this day, a lot of people don't know that there's an opportunity to go to college for free. So I don't think we've done enough work to market that and how that, especially if, for those who want to go to a four-year university, which I did, I was able to get a full scholarship. But for those who don't have the opportunity to get a full scholarship, attending CCBC and then finishing up at a four-year um, institution will help reduce your student loan burden. So I think we need to do a better job of communicating to our Baltimore County residents what the requirements are to attend school, CCBC for free, but also doing more, especially for individuals who are currently facing unemployment, for how they can go get a certificate in a career field maybe that they haven't thought of before, especially now with the age of technology and you have AI. Cybersecurity is something that is always needed. There's also here near Martin State Airport on the base a cyber defense um, hub that they're getting ready to install over here off of Martin Boulevard with the National Guard that a lot of people don't even know about. We're not doing enough to market. In terms of workforce development for CCBC, I think one of the challenges that is faced is not enough private partnerships so that when people do graduate with these certificates that they have an opportunity to maybe do an internship to get some time under their belt so that they can actually compete for a job, not just having their certificate without the experience, but they can do both. I ran a entrepreneurship program at Georgetown University for individuals who are formerly incarcerated and we're coming back into the community, training them on how to become entrepreneurs so that they don't go back to a life of crime, but they leave with a skill set that they can leverage and be positive, productive members of society. And one of the things that was very, very successful for that program is having those private partnerships with corporations and businesses so that when people are getting that certification on day one, they have a place to learn those skills and get real hands-on experience so that when they finish the program, they can actually compete for a job with a living wage.
I taught in the state prison downtown Baltimore for 2 years in the 1990s, so I understand how important that stuff is.
Yes.
My final question is, besides your race, there's also other county races as far as county council positions, and also a race for county executive and for state's attorney. Do you have
Yeah.
a preference for any of those other positions that you say, oh, I hope that person wins, or if that person loses?
Yeah. I do. I'm not gonna give a public endorsement right this second for the county executive race, but I do think based on how the race is gonna go, voters are listening and they're paying attention. I think if you just look at how voters vote, I spent a stint on the Baltimore County Board of Elections. And one of my first acts of public service right out of high school was being an election judge. And a lot of people, I will tell you, that aren't necessarily paying attention or paying attention now because of all of the challenges that are happening on the federal level. If you look at how folks are raising, I think Julian Jones is going to have a strong chance of winning. Most of the folks running for county executive are coming from the west side of the county. And so just by the sheer nature of the competition there, they're going to be, stretching themselves thin for their own constituent base on that side of the county. And I believe that the race is going to be decided for county executive by how people on the southeast side of Baltimore County, right here, Dundalk, Essex, Middle River, and Chase, Rosedale, how they vote. And I think, there's never been an African American county executive. And if you look at what happened in Maryland for the governor's race, Westmore won. If you look what happened with the Senate seat for Maryland when Angela also Brooks and was running against Trone and she won. I think that people are looking for change. I think they're looking for representation they have never seen. But I also think there's going to be a really, really, really good race between Izzy Patoka, Pat Young, and Nick Stewart. Nick Stewart is rising up the ranks as a newcomer, a fresh face. His message is resonating, especially with new voters and millennial voters. And I think, the Banner had put out an article that he outraised Councilman Patoka. But you also have the Jewish community that votes. They come out and they vote. And so it's going to be interesting to see, how Nick Stewart is going to impact the votes for Pat Young and Izzy Patoka. But if history serves itself correctly based on how the Black community votes, and there's a strong Black vote over there on the West Side, I think that majority of that is probably going to go to Julian Jones. And with the competition between the other ones, he may slide right on over and win. That's just my personal assessment. In terms of the state's attorney race, Sarah David is out there knocking doors. She's got a message that resonates safer with Sarah. If you look at how many people have tried to unseat Scott Schellenberger, it's very hard because he has been able to win the conservative vote. And so I think it's going to be hard to beat him. But I think if Sarah continues and the Democrats come out and vote 100%, that there's a strong possibility that we may have a new state's attorney. But I think all of the folks that are in the race are great people. The only thing that I think is going to hurt the current council members that are in the race was that bill that they had put up to increase their pensions that everyone found out about on the news. And there's a small subset of voters without party. They don't care about their party affiliation because they're independents that are saying they don't want to vote for anybody that is currently serving on the county council. But I do believe that Julian Jones has the strongest potential to win.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Take care and good luck on the campaign trail.
Thank you so much.